There we are. Hey, Ricky, how are you?
Hey, how's it going?
Excellent. So, how is life? What's the weather like where you are? It is nice and cold and chilly, and every negative adjective you can think of up here in Milwaukee.
Oh yeah, man. Same thing going on here in Louisville. I think we're about 28 degrees. Pretty chilly here, so I've been in all day, so staying warm. How about yourself?
It's well, staying warm is a challenge here. It is, I think it's like 9 degrees out right now. A balmy 9 degrees. It's really nice when they don't hit the double digits. Speaking of STEM, you can do a lot of math with terrible weather here. Yeah, but otherwise, staying warm right here. I've got all kinds of fun stuff that I can share here, but we'll get to that when we need to.
Yeah, man, definitely.
So yeah, so we're talking about the STEM and the future of education. I'd be happy to introduce myself, but I think you are way more interesting, Ricky. I'd love to hear a quick description of who you are, where you came to be, everything cool about you. And I know there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, man, I'll give you a quick rundown. So I'm Ricky Mason. I'm the founder of BrainSTEM, an ed tech startup. And our claim to fame is the first metaverse for STEM education. And we're working on building that tool to connect schools, teachers, and students all around the world. So that's our biggest goal, is to build every school in America in the metaverse. But a little bit on my background, man, and how I got into STEM. So as I tell people, I knew I wanted to be an engineer in the 5th grade. And that kind of came from one meeting with a robotics engineer from IBM at my school. They came to do an assembly. And after that experience, I told my mom, like, Mom, that's what I want to do. I want to be a robotics engineer. And quickly after doing some research, I saw that most of the robots in that time were in space, like Spirit, some of those rovers that were going to Mars. And I'm like, Mom, I got to be an astronaut if I'm going to be a robotics engineer. So I set the goal really high. And just kind of chasing that dream. I've had the opportunity to do some really cool things. I haven't become an astronaut, but I actually got the opportunity to launch 5 rockets. Most notably, the last space shuttle. I got to be a part of that in 2011, the old school space shuttle, as I say, and the Juno rocket launch. So if you're familiar with Juno, it's the satellite that's actually taking those pictures of Jupiter right now and sending those beautiful shots back. So it's awesome to be a part of that. But actually live some of those dreams. But beyond that, I've actually worked at the CIA as a computer engineer. I worked at the DoD as a weapons test engineer, and at the University of Kentucky as an adjunct faculty and research associate. I'm in the College of Agriculture, developing drone technology and remote sensing technology for ag and sustainable food.
Oh man, do I have to follow this? This is, I guess I have to introduce myself. Ricky, thank you for making that incredibly difficult. But that's amazing, and it's really cool to see all the different facets that people can move in. But it's a pleasure to be connected with everyone here too. I realize that I'm probably not a familiar face to everybody. Also, quick shout out, Marcia. It's devastating. I know it's 60 degrees in Oklahoma. I wish we could say something similar here. But my name is Andrew. I would like to give everybody a quick shout out who is entering the STEM field later in life. Ricky is going to be everything that we need to know about, setting the right standards for people early. I am a late bloomer when it comes to STEM. My major is actually in international relations. And then I actually went to China, of all places, and operated STEM programs there for about 5 years. So there's actually some interesting angles that we can take on the benefits of like how STEM is operated in different countries. I would certainly say here in the US, we do an amazing job building a more kind of full suite of tools for people to become good engineers, so social skills and creativity and stuff like that. But that won't be the subject of today's webinar. And after finishing my master's at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, I am working on bringing brain-computer interface into education. So I actually have on my head here, I don't want to hijack this conversation because Ricky, you have so many more interesting things to talk about, but I did build a little machine here. So if you would like, that actually detects how attentive I am in real time and gives off different light signals. So when we start talking about some things, I could switch the camera over there and you can actually see how engaged I am in real time. But we'll save that for later. Ricky, we want to hear all about you. So tell us, so STEM, the future of education, you clearly got inspired at a very early age and are doing amazing things with that. If you were to reset the system all over again and say, hey, we need to start on a certain pathway at a certain time and engage people in certain futures, what would you do?
Man, well, the first thing I would do is get all students a computer, a tablet, or a phone in their hands. I mean, I think as parents, sometimes we kind of fight that urge to, hey, here's a tablet or a phone or technology, because they're like, oh, but I think for the future, we need to prepare our students to be in that digital age and prepare them to use this technology early on, but also set a plan for them, in using that technology. Don't just make them consumers of the technology, make them creators, in that space. So my biggest thing is, like, right now I was kind of mind boggled that every school doesn't have a, computational thinking type of class where students are going through and learning, engineering mindset and the way of thinking. But computational thinking, I think, is going to be huge for a start. So every student with in a computational thinking class, but also computer science being involved at the early age, in elementary school. I know a lot of students have been getting involved, like, in brief classes during, like, hour of code using Scratch, but I think that needs to be involved every year. We need to get students. My kids are 5 and 7 years old, and I started them coding last year. My 5-year-old is doing block programming. Like, he kind of gets it. He can put together some code and think through some of those problems that he wants to move his character around. So we started him in Scratch, just like they start a lot of kids in. But I think sometimes people think that a kid has to be in middle school or high school before they start coding, but that can start, early at a really early age.
And speaking of that too, so I always feel like, and maybe you feel the same way, whenever we can find a way to engage somebody within this world in a way that they might not otherwise have access to, this will, like, generate a lot of thoughts in their brain that this is something I can take on. Like, I think of my own personal experience, and as I mentioned, I'm a late bloomer in this field. And I remember vividly, like, being in high school and a teacher who did a wonderful job, but he set very hard expectations for what was required of people going into these engineering fields. And I felt totally left out, and then kind of left that field aside. So if you were to engage somebody, like you mentioned, those early age, and kind of introduce them to this world when they don't have parents who are engineers, when they don't have people in their community who can dissect this field for them, like, what are some of the strategies that you've worked with or think are useful for people to know would be?
Well, I think the most engaging thing is to just get kids, get the products in kids' hands. From Lego builds to Minecraft builds have been some of the easiest ways that I've gotten kids just thinking about construction and builds and computational thinking, but thinking through numbers and how things are built. But robotics is probably the #1 easiest way to get any kid. You show them a robot and they're like, yes, what can I do with it? What does it do? How do I work it? So robots have been, like, the key to getting kids involved. And it helps them break that barrier, because every kid wants to play with that robot. So when they're, that's been our easiest sell. And then, believe it or not, Beyblades. There's a lot of physics and engineering that goes into playing Beyblades and learning about how Beyblades move and the different Beyblades that are when to use those Beyblades. So those have been some of the keys to getting kids in early.
I apologize for making you talk to an Arduino set, but I just wanted to say that. So I have this set up so that when I get super engaged, this red light will turn on. And you can tell this entire time that you were talking about that I got super engaged. So this headband is going to detect that and send this light out here. And just throw it out there. Like, I did not see this light turn a different color. So I have these 2 lights set up when I get less engaged with what you're talking about. And clearly I'm talking to myself, so now I don't care as much, and this light's going to turn on. So I just wanted to say you have visual proof that I am super engaged with what you were talking about and totally agree. So, and on that too, so just to, I mean, I think you deserve a lot of credit for this whole system that you're putting together. Tell me about how this STEM metaverse can help facilitate these kind of communications, or if there's other goals that you're looking to seek out there. Like, how do you see these goals being completed through the system that you're building?
Yeah, man. So within the metaverse, with what we're experiencing right now, like this, our kids have been out of school in our local school district for 2 weeks due to COVID, and they haven't been able to really communicate with their friends outside of, really like during class time, which is like, everybody be quiet unless you're giving me an answer. So within our metaverse, we see that being a continuity product for school. So students in school, they get into the metaverse and walk around in the metaverse and still join and participate in curriculum. But then they can also go home and they know where to go once they get home in this 3D world. So the metaverse is a place that you use in the classroom and at home, and where it means something for students when they complete their assignments and they show up. So usually when you share an assignment, it's usually between you, your teacher, and maybe your parent gets to see it. But say me and you are in the metaverse, your assignment is shared in the metaverse. You created a podcast or a video to share back with the class. Everybody can go and view that in the metaverse. And you can get comments on that and you can share with other students. So we've seen a big increase in student engagement, even with students in class, where students were maybe getting up out of their seats before during class. They're actually not getting out of their seats now. They're fidgeting around, but in the metaverse, running around and seeing objects that might relate back to their curriculum or the class. So it's all an engaging experience, even if they're kind of not, focused on a video, but they're still in the world, experiencing that jungle or that reading or a book that might be a part of that curriculum.
Nice. And speaking of books that you mentioned in the curriculum, I saw Daniel mark in the chat that you are all about 21st century learning and Mitch Resnick. I have right here, I've been late to the game. So I've been going through Mindstorms with Seymour Pepper, who obviously was a big coworker of Mitch Resnick. If I can do a humble brag real quick, I actually got to be Mitch Resnick's translator in China for a week. So I got to spend some quality time there with the Scratch team. They're actually a really small team, believe it or not. There's not a whole lot of people who operate Scratch, and they're super interesting and motivated. But now the humble brag's out of the way. So Ricky, when you mentioned one of the things that we take to heart here at NeuroMaker, and just one of the personal things that like I myself trying to get people involved in this world try to do, is to connect people with the experiences that will develop those mindsets where they're going to want to take these things on. And I think, as you mentioned, like when people start off early and they get to see themselves in this world, and I think virtually is a really cool way to do it. It's about connecting those different kind of goals that people can envision and some kind of a pathway that can get them there. So just out of curiosity, have you seen connecting people with certain experiences, like whether it be a certain age or like a certain difficulty level or something out of their comfort zone that works quite well, or any other things that you could share in that field?
I think the biggest thing that we've seen is we've been able to increase the impact of, some of the greatest teachers and some of the greatest lessons. So whereas in the classroom, you're limited to one teacher to, 25 students, maximum. But within the metaverse, we can have 400 students, that same teacher giving 400 students that excellent experience that that teacher, has built, or that curriculum that teacher has built. More teachers can experience that. I think from a group perspective, we've seen a really good response, especially, like I said, when students are online. Like I said, they're kind of siloed. And from a classroom perspective, we've seen students be a lot more willing to get into a classroom, be more engaged. When you come on as an avatar, you're Superman or Superwoman, you're Flash or, Storm, or any, kind of character that you can kind of think of. And not to mention that you can create your own character that you can be, and also share that character with your friends, and your friends can show up as the character that you created. It creates just a different level of agency, and it makes students more excited about showing up for school.
And speaking of which, so you mentioned, so students taking on that kind of agency, and then being able to like work with other colleagues in a whole different setting and kind of portray themselves as maybe something a bit more aspirational or comfortable or whatever. Like Linda just put in the chat, do you see there being a bigger connection to social emotional learning within the metaverse?
Oh man, I think that's a huge piece of it. As we, like I said, again, we experienced over this COVID, students just haven't had an opportunity. I know my kids, they miss their friends. Even, like I said, now, last week we were on Zoom school, and the same kind of thing, like, oh, I wish I could talk to my friends. I wish I had these opportunities to kind of talk to them. And within the metaverse, that kind of exists. They could be there in class all day with their friends, just as they were during a regular day. And a teacher could change that classroom space from a math classroom space to a reading classroom space to a STEM-based classroom space, with the curriculum changing just right there, you know, in front of the kids. So the kid doesn't really have to move or jump around, and they can be in that space with their friends even after, you know, lecture. So lectures happened, we've done our work. Now I have 30 minutes. Let me chat with my friends while we wait for the next class to start. Versus now it's like, okay, we're done with class. Let me sit by myself and wait this 30 minutes out until my next class, or, you know, go and play a video game, which, I mean, I think being in our gamified world with their friends, they would probably pick that maybe over going to play a video game. Or even if we had some like integrated time where, hey, this is a collaborative Minecraft space between classes that we're going to go and work in, and we can give you points for, you know, working in those games. So that's kind of where we see this going, is we'll integrate opportunities like that for kids to collaborate and earn what we call brain cycles, in which they use to go to the BrainSTEM store to purchase different digital assets, or even from some of our community partners have donated physical assets that students can kind of purchase using those brain cycles that'll be shipped to them.
That's awesome. So, you know, it definitely seems like students can take on these different kind of social circumstances that they may, or these different social decisions that like with groups like in the metaverse that they might not otherwise have in another circumstance. So like when really pushing that forward, I was wondering whether or not I want to ask this question or not, but I personally love to get feedback like this. So I do want to give you a lot of credit, and everybody else out there who's building something new. I feel like in order to make anything new, you're going to have to stumble a lot. So one question that'd be, and feel free to take this in whatever direction you wish. Like, what are two things? So one thing that you thought would work out really well, but just did not work. And then maybe one thing that you're super proud of that either things worked as expected, or something maybe that you didn't expect would work, but then took off. So when building this future of education, what are some of the big successes and stumbles that you've seen?
Oh man, I thought that being in VR and a headset, actual headset for education would be like the big thing. But then I quickly realized after I put one on for like an hour, I'm like, oh my God, I couldn't stay in this. I couldn't probably do this very often. And I found myself taking it off, you know, every 5 to 10 minutes. So, but so that's kind of been the one thing that I was like, oh man, I thought it would be cool to have like a 1 hour class in VR. But the other part of that, I've found that just being able to give this experience to kids on a Chromebook has been a big win for us. Before we needed, you know, gaming computers, high-end computers with graphics cards and whatnot. But we're able to deliver this experience in a collaborative, like 25 students in one classroom on a Chromebook. Like that there has been a win for us, just being able to do that successfully.
That's awesome. So, I mean, I kind of half-heartedly wanted to bring that up because like we've seen kind of our things that work, our things that don't. One thing, if I may just throw it out there, one of the things that we've really seen on the neuroscience part of kind of bringing something new into STEM is kind of giving people a different sense of looking at themselves in their own social emotional way. So I can see here that beyond that light that I just put together, this is going to be kind of another somewhat shameless plug. Like as I mentioned, you can see that attention score that I'm putting in here in real time, so that, like as we mentioned, some of those successes and stumbles. One of the things that we have found to be really cool for students to build is, instead of doing social emotional learning through going through worksheets and talking about what your feelings are and those kind of things. One of the new technology things that we've been super excited to get involved in is actually being able to quantify that and display it. So like we've been able to have students kind of feel through things the way that technology can show them, so that when students are feeling really engaged or really relaxed or distracted, you can kind of get some objective feedback on there. So like throwing it out on that question, I feel like the biggest successes and stumbles that we've seen is honestly, like you mentioned Chromebooks there. Chromebooks are such a different operating system than a lot of the ones that engineering students are using, or even like other people that we use in the office here, that kind of getting this integration into something that's Chromebook friendly has been something that we've worked really hard on, and led to a bunch of stumbles in the past. I don't know if you've had similar issues kind of putting together like your platform on computers that are often not as friendly to high-tech applications as we would like to be. But yeah, that's like another interesting thing to throw out there. And like, while we have like another 7 minutes here, what else do you see in the future of STEM education itself, whether it be metaverse or, like you mentioned earlier, computational thinking? What other things out there do you think should start to be built or improved upon that we're not quite seeing yet?
Well, man, I think the first thing is more opportunities for kids to see things like what the BCI that you have on your head, because kids don't know what STEM majors do. What do people in STEM actually do at work? They think, I mean, I can't tell you the number of kids that I've shown up and they're like, "What? I'm an engineer. What do you think I do?" "Oh, you work on cars." I think that's the first thing that everyone says. And I'm like, "No, I don't work on cars." And I'm like, "Well, I'm an electrical engineer." Like, "Oh, you wire houses." And I'm like, no, that's not what I do. And so I think the biggest thing is getting more exposure to STEM careers is going to be huge for us. So I love the idea of what you all are doing with NeuroMaker, and making the connection from computer science to electrical engineering to biomedical engineering. I think that path, kids need to see that, because I didn't know that I could be an electrical engineer and still be doing, medical research, basically. So I think that is huge. One of the big things that we need to do is open up that door and show more of those careers.
I'll say one of the most interesting things that we always found here was some of my personal favorite students that I've ever worked with, in introducing them to like biomedical engineering, where people, I feel like first of all, I feel like a lot of people aren't even aware, as you said, that those kind of options are out there. But then it's actually a really, really sneaky way to kind of get them involved, just like you said, into career options they never considered. So for instance, people who we can engage with biomedical engineering, and that's, like you mentioned, that's often through kind of understanding what they do. So you're helping people, you're building systems that can improve quality of life, but then it's a really sneaky way, and don't tell anybody this, but this is what I try to push people towards, to get them towards electrical engineering. Because ultimately, when you're working as a biomedical engineer, you're taking all these analogs. There it is. There it is. There it is. You're working with all these analog signals, and you're going to have to process this kind of material that's coming from this data that's coming from the human body. And those are most likely going to be something electrical, whether it's coming from these kind of BCI sensors or an EKG or anything else. So it's like little tricks like that where, personally, and just to throw it out there too, I used to work with a lot of educational robotics in the past. So stuff like Lego robots and Vex robots and all that stuff. And I think exposing students to the world that STEM can be more than just making a car go faster. Like, you can really like help people in ways that might not be superficially obvious. So super fun stuff. I got another fun plug I love to throw out there is one of my personal favorite things. I see we have some education nerds in the chat talking about Mitrisnik and stuff like that. I can throw out there too. Chris Deede's 60-year curriculum is hands down one of my personal favorite go-to things for helping students design out kind of learning outcomes that they want to achieve over the course of their entire career. A lot of really cool educational research that's happening now, including STEM, but like more generally too, is about reframing mindset so that students they're not just thinking that education ends when you leave high school, leave middle school, leave college, leave whatever. It's that you're constantly needing to learn new stuff, and things are going to move really fast. So it's developing those systems to support that. One more thing I'll throw out there too for any other education nerds, the Stanford Open Loop University, super interesting. So they are trying to pilot breaking up the 4-year college degree into segments that you can take on at different points in the future. So you kind of have 4 years of school, and you can separate it out into different educational attainment levels. But that's going far out there. Ricky, any other fun? We got a couple more minutes here. Fun quips. Like, did something cool happen in your life? Is there another STEM thing that you want to throw out there that we haven't hit yet?
No, man. I mean, my biggest thing is just get students involved as early as you can in STEM. I think that we have to do a better job of overall, instilling that that STEM spirit in our students, starting at a young age, and continuing that through high school. I think oftentimes we kind of let students kind of choose what they kind of do up until like high school. And then it's like, hey, you've been good in math and science, you should kind of go over to engineering. But we kind of got to start thinking about that a little bit earlier. When students show that aptitude for STEM, math, and creativity, let's go ahead and give them those opportunities and try to be a community around those students. One of the biggest things that I always tell nonprofits and schools that we work with here is I want to see teachers, families, parents cheering students on at robotics competitions and hackathons the same way we're cheering students on at basketball games and football games. Like for me, that was one of the biggest things. As a kid, I said I knew I wanted to be a robotics engineer in the 5th grade, but football was my dream because everyone was cheering me on, you know, for football. And I mean, I made it. I played at UK, in the SEC and got hurt, but I really wanted to do robotics. And it wasn't until college that I had those people actually cheering me on for doing STEM. So let's work on building that community and getting behind more students and giving them more opportunities to be cheered on and get more awards for participating in STEM and supporting those students.
That's going to be hard to follow up on, but I will try to ask you one last question in like the last minute that we have here. So I feel like to bring this full circle, like you're building out this amazing platform. You have this amazing experience. You talked about how to engage people early. If you could leave us with one cool piece of optimism, could you give us an example of somebody that you feel like has gone through this, like a student that's kind of been able to live through the experience that you're looking them to get through, or like something really positive that's come out of all this work that you've done?
Yeah, I mean, two really positive ones. My first actual student that parents moved to Kentucky, he just graduated from UCSB, University California, Santa Barbara, with a degree in electrical engineering. So it actually worked. I worked with him from his freshman year of high school through his senior year, and he's actually now an electrical engineer. And another one of those students that I work with in the lab, building kind of project, kind of like what you have there with the BCI project. Another one of those students is actually a junior at U of L and University of Louisville here, and just reached out to me for an internship in engineering. So it's like, wow, I mean, it really works. Getting these students involved, getting them doing hands-on projects, just really works. And as far as a shameless, I mean, I guess a plug.
Do it.
Check out BrainSTEM U. Follow us at BrainSTEM_University on social media. We'll be doing more talks kind of like this and just discussing like cool things, seminars, discussing space, but for kids. We want to actually like talk at a level that students can understand. I feel like a lot of these things that people talk about when we're talking about tech, it's like over everybody's head. So let's break these things down and talk about real world scenarios where students can understand that.
Couldn't have said it better. And thank you, Linda, for putting our contact info in the chat too. If you want to learn about bringing BCI, neuroscience, all that kind of stuff into the classroom, we'd be happy to schedule a nerd session and have some fun. But allow me to say, Ricky, you're so awesome. Thank you for taking the time to do this. Hope we can spread your message out there and that you enjoy slightly warmer weather than we are here in Wisconsin.
Yeah, man. No, thank you. I appreciate you and look forward to building more NeuroMaker projects in the metaverse.
You got to, do it. Let's do it, man. All right. Okay. Well, it's a pleasure talking to everybody. Bye-bye now.